The stark white hallway of Lenox Hill Hospital gleamed under the harsh, unrelenting glare of the fluorescent lights. It was an incredibly sterile and cold environment, echoing only with the rhythmic, steady beeping of a heart. Monitor from a nearby room. Lily Carter, 7 months pregnant and visibly exhausted, held her swollen belly incredibly gently, patiently waiting for her turn outside the crowded ultrasound room. Her pale hands trembled slightly in her lap, not from any physical fear of the medical procedure, but from sheer, bone-deep exhaustion. The immense, suffocating stress from her rapidly crumbling marriage to Brandon. Hale, the arrogant, wealthy heir to the massive Hale Industries corporate empire, had slowly begun to toxically seep into absolutely every single part of her being. She sat quietly on the hard plastic chair, mindlessly scrolling through her phone to distract herself, occasionally glancing fondly at a blurry sonogram photo she had proudly saved as her lock screen wallpaper. "Mommy's little fighter," she whispered softly to the screen, a sad smile touching her lips. But true peace absolutely never lasts very long in the vicious world of the ultra-rich, especially when endless money so easily masks such profound cruelty. Suddenly, from the far corner of the long corridor, 2 women aggressively appeared. They were perfectly, expensively styled, draped head to toe in luxury designer labels. Victoria Hale, Brandon's ruthless older sister, a billionaire, heiress and a notorious power broker on Wall Street, strutted arrogantly toward her. She wore a fitted, pristine white Dior coat, her sharp designer heels clicking loudly and aggressively against the linoleum tile like weapons. Walking right beside her was Sloane Reed. She was Brandon's young, unapologetic mistress, confident, flashy, and wearing a highly smug, cruel smirk painted perfectly under her bright red lipstick. The glamorous pair looked exactly as if they had just confidently stepped right out of an exclusive Manhattan charity gala. Absolutely not a sterile hospital wing. Well, Victoria's cold, sharp voice loudly sliced through the quiet silence of the hallway. Are we actually still sitting here pretending to be a real part of this prestigious family? Lily completely froze in her chair, her heart instantly pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "Victoria, please," she said quietly, looking down. "I am just here for a routine medical checkup. Leave me alone." Sloane tilted her perfectly styled head, feigning mock, exaggerated concern. "Oh, how incredibly brave of you. Still desperately clinging onto a wealthy man who clearly doesn't love you anymore." The cruel words stung like a physical slap across the face, but Lily bravely didn't answer her. Instead, she clutched her round belly even tighter, and instinctively, fiercely protective maternal gesture. Victoria leaned aggressively closer, her expensive, heavy perfume smelling sharp and entirely overwhelming in the small space. "You are an absolute, pathetic embarrassment to our name, Lily." A desperate charity case who foolishly thought she could permanently climb into the Hale dynasty simply by getting knocked up. With a baby. "Stop it," Lily murmured, trying desperately to step away and create distance. Her back brushed against the cold, hard wall. The already narrow hallway seemed to violently shrink around her. Sloane's nasty grin widened into a full sneer. "Oh, come on, Victoria. Look at her. She can't even find the courage to stand up for herself. No wonder Brandon got so incredibly bored of her." "Don't you dare talk about him," Lily said, her voice finally breaking with emotion. But right before she could even finish her sentence, Sloane aggressively shoved her shoulder. It was a light shove, meant to cruelly mock her physical fragility, but it was enough. Lily violently stumbled backward, her feet sliding uncontrollably on the freshly polished floor. Her low heel twisted painfully beneath her weight. Victoria, cold, calculating, and wildly impatient, suddenly kicked her foot out toward Lily's ankle, pretending to try and help her balance. But the physical blow was entirely deliberate. It was sharp, aggressive, and unspeakably cruel. Lily gasped loudly as her footing gave way completely, falling incredibly hard, directly onto her side against the hard tile. Blinding, searing pain violently shot through her lower stomach. She let out an agonizing scream, one hand desperately clutching her baby bump, the other bracing against the cold floor. For a terrifying second, absolutely everything blurred around her. The bright, fluorescent lights overhead spun. The deafening echo of her own scream bounced off the walls. She heard the faint, shocked gasp from a triage nurse standing at the nearby desk. "Victoria," Sloane whispered frantically, looking genuinely startled for the first time. "You actually kicked her." "Shut your mouth," Victoria hissed viciously, her eyes wild with panic. She clearly slipped on her own. Lily's entire world spun out of control. The intense pain radiated hotly from deep inside her womb. "My baby," she whispered brokenly, tears flooding her eyes. "Please, God, my baby." At that exact, chaotic moment, an older man quickly turned the corner into the hallway. It was Tom Carter, Lily's father, a proud, retired FDNY firefighter. His gray hair was slightly messy, and his kind eyes were instantly burning with sheer, unadulterated fear. "Lily," he shouted at the top of his lungs, rushing frantically forward. He dropped heavily to his knees, his strong hands visibly shaking as he gently held his crying daughter. He looked down and saw it. Bright red blood had already stained the pristine white hospital floor. Tom's head snapped up. "What the hell did you do to her?" he roared. Victoria arrogantly lifted her chin, trying to maintain her icy facade. She clumsily tripped on her own feet. Tom's booming voice roared through the quiet corridor, sounding incredibly raw, primal, and entirely broken. You are a lying devil. He frantically fumbled for his cell phone in his jacket pocket, his large hands trembling violently as he dialed the 3 specific digits he hadn't had to call since his active firefighting days. 911. I have a medical emergency. My daughter has just been violently attacked. She is 7 months pregnant, and she is bleeding at Lenox Hill Hospital. Send help immediately. The shock triage nurse quickly rushed over to actively assist them, loudly shouting down the hall for an emergency gurney. 2 burly hospital security guards quickly appeared from the elevator banks, their heavy radios crackling loudly with static. One of the observant guards immediately pulled out his iPhone and began quietly filming the chaotic scene for official evidence. Victoria stepped backward rapidly, her face turning ghostly pale as she finally realized the brutal scene now had multiple, highly credible witnesses. Sloane nervously clutched her expensive designer handbag, her panicked eyes darting wildly toward the nearest exit sign. Lily whimpered softly in agony as the trained medics carefully, swiftly lifted her broken body onto the rolling stretcher. Tom followed closely behind them, hot tears freely streaking down his weathered, hardened face as the stretcher rolled rapidly away toward the emergency wing. The quiet corridor completely filled with the loud, piercing wail of an approaching ambulance siren from the street below, a terrifying sound that Victoria Hale would absolutely never, ever forget. Outside the massive hospital window, the beautiful city of New York glowed peacefully beneath the dark night sky, completely oblivious to the massive, destructive storm that was just about to violently erupt among the city's untouchable elite. Because that one single, arrogant act, a careless, brutal, and malicious kick, would very soon completely unravel a massive corporate empire, publicly expose every single dark lie, and actively ignite a massive, public war for true justice that absolutely no amount of billionaire money could ever silence. And as the flashing red lights of the ambulance reflected brightly off the hospital's glass doors, one undeniable truth became crystal clear to everyone involved. This horrific night was absolutely only the beginning. The emergency room aggressively pulsed with chaotic noise. The sharp, rhythmic beeping of various heart monitors, the hurried, frantic footsteps of medical staff, and the loud, metallic clink of metal stretchers being rapidly wheeled past. Yet, inside Lily's small, private hospital room, absolutely everything felt incredibly muted, exactly as if the entire world had been tightly wrapped in thick glass. She lay there in the bed, incredibly pale and physically trembling, clutching her swollen belly protectively. Her baby still moved inside her. It was very faint, but undeniably alive. A senior doctor with incredibly gentle, kind eyes spoke to her softly. Mrs. Hale, your baby's heartbeat is currently steady, but there is some severe internal bruising present. You absolutely need to rest completely and stay here under our strict observation. Lily nodded weakly, her tired eyes rapidly filling with fresh tears. Is my baby entirely safe for now, Doctor? Yes, he replied reassuringly. But extreme emotional or physical stress could easily trigger early, dangerous labor. You must actively try to stay as calm as possible. How on earth could she possibly stay calm? The terrifying image of Victoria's cold, calculating face and Sloane's cruel, mocking smirk played in her exhausted mind exactly like a cruel, endless movie loop. The deafening sound of her own father angrily shouting still echoed loudly in her aching head. Tom sat heavily in a plastic chair directly beside her, tightly gripping her pale hand, his thick knuckles stark white from the pressure. They are aggressively saying it was just a clumsy accident, he muttered bitterly, his voice shaking with rage. An accident? She literally kicked you to the floor. Lily. Lily stared blankly up at the textured ceiling. Dad, please. I really don't want to cause any more trouble with them. Tom looked at his daughter in absolute, profound disbelief. Trouble? Lily. They could have easily killed your innocent child tonight. The heavy door to the room suddenly opened. Brandon Hale entered confidently. He wore an incredibly expensive, custom-tailored suit. He looked absolutely immaculate, his diamond Rolex catching the harsh overhead light. He smelled strongly of expensive cologne and deep, underlying anxiety. Right behind him, a burly hospital security guard watched his movements incredibly closely. Brandon sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. Lily, I came as soon as I heard the news. What the hell actually happened here? Tom stood up immediately from his chair, his imposing frame blocking the bed. You tell me. So, your arrogant sister and your cheap mistress just violently attacked my pregnant daughter in a hallway. Brandon's handsome face instantly stiffened in defense. That is absolutely ridiculous. Tom. Victoria called me from the car. She said Lily simply slipped on the floor and fell. Slipped. Tom's voice completely cracked with fury. There are multiple eyewitnesses to the assault. For God's sake. Brandon completely ignored him, stepping around the older man and turning his attention entirely to Lily. Honey, please. You know Victoria. She is dramatic, but she would absolutely never intentionally hurt you. Maybe her emotions simply got out of hand during an argument. But calling the actual police? Do you have any earthly idea what a massive scandal this could do to our family's public reputation? Lily's pale lips trembled violently. To the family's reputation. Brandon. I almost entirely lost our baby tonight. Brandon exhaled sharply, aggressively rubbing his forehead in frustration. Look, I will personally handle this mess. Just please, don't actively make it any worse by officially filing criminal charges against my sister. We can easily settle this whole thing quietly. Tom's square jaw tightened dangerously. Quietly? You mean you want us to help You cover up a violent crime? Dad, please, Lily whispered weakly, exhausted tears sliding down her pale cheeks. Not right now. I'm so tired. Brandon quickly crouched down directly beside her hospital bed, his facial expression instantly softening into a highly rehearsed, fake sympathy. I promise you, I will fix absolutely everything. Lily, just blindly trust me on this. But even as he spoke those comforting words, Lily clearly saw his cell phone light up brightly in his jacket pocket with a new text message. It was from Sloane. She absolutely won't say anything to the cops, right? Lily's battered heart completely cracked into a million irreparable pieces. Outside in the hallway, the triage nurse, Elena Park, lingered quietly near the open door, successfully pretending to be busy checking medical paperwork. She had clearly seen the entire horrific incident unfold in the hallway earlier. Her hands actively shook as she held her plastic clipboard, constantly replaying the terrifying sight of that cruel, deliberate kick and the agonizing sound of Lily's scream. When Brandon finally stepped outside the room to take an urgent business call, Tom turned urgently to Elena. You clearly saw exactly what happened out there, didn't you? Elena hesitated for a brief second, glancing nervously down the hall. Sir, I really can't say too much to you right now. But yes, I will absolutely make sure. My official incident report includes exactly what I saw happen. Tom's broad shoulders sagged heavily with immense relief. Thank you, Miss. God bless you. Meanwhile, further down the corridor, Brandon was whispering angrily into his cell phone, pacing frantically back and forth. Victoria, you absolutely cannot talk to the press or anyone else. Tell Sloane to keep her damn mouth shut. No police. No statements. Absolutely no press. From inside her quiet room, Lily could hear absolutely every single desperate word he said. Her stomach violently twisted in disgust. Moments later, 2 uniformed hospital security guards entered the room. Ma'am, we have officially taken all the initial staff statements. The NYPD will arrive very soon to file an official criminal report. Brandon froze dead in his tracks in the doorway. Wait. Who the hell called the police here? Tom's booming voice thundered across the room. I did. Brandon's dark eyes flashed dangerously with fury. You made a massive, unforgivable mistake, old man. No, Tom said incredibly firmly, standing his ground. I made the absolute right call. Nobody violently hurts my daughter and simply walks away unpunished. Lily slowly turned her tired head to look out the hospital window. The glittering Manhattan skyline glowed brightly against the dark night. Completely indifferent to her profound, personal pain. A single, hot tear slid slowly down her pale cheek as she whispered to herself, I am entirely done being silent. Outside, the faint Wailing sound of yet another ambulance siren loudly echoed in the distance. But this time, it absolutely wasn't paralyzing fear that gripped her heart. It was absolute, undeniable resolve. Because right therein, that cold, sterile hospital room, completely surrounded by cruel betrayal and toxic lies, something fundamental inside Lily Carter permanently changed. Forever. She would absolutely no longer be the quiet, submissive, compliant wife. She would bravely become the strong woman who fiercely fought back against the empire. The shrill, deafening echo of police sirens outside Lenox Hill Hospital sharply sliced through the freezing midnight air as two uniformed NYPD officers rushed urgently through the sliding glass doors. Their heavy, black tactical boots hit the freshly polished floor with a loud, heavy certainty, their shoulder radios constantly crackling loudly with static. The specific section of the hallway where the violent assault had happened was already actively taped off with yellow police tape. A single, small drop of dried red blood sitting near the waiting bench quietly whispered the brutal truth that absolutely no one in power wanted to face. Tom Carter stood like a stone guard directly outside Lily's private door. His muscular arms tightly crossed, pure fury deeply carved into every single line of his weathered, exhausted face. When the two officers quickly approached, he lifted his chin defiantly. "I am the one who called 911, Tom stated. "My daughter was violently attacked. Here. She is 7 months pregnant." Officer Ramirez, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, efficiently flipped open a small black notepad. "Sir, please walk me through exactly what happened here tonight." Tom's voice violently shook with heavily restrained paternal rage. She was simply standing right there by the wall, quietly waiting for her scheduled ultrasound. Victoria Hale and that other woman, Sloane Reed, came marching in and started viciously attacking her. First with incredibly cruel words, and then with their hands. My daughter fell backward, and then they deliberately kicked her. The younger officer, Daniels, frowned deeply, scribbling notes. "Do we happen to have any reliable eyewitnesses to the assault?" Before Tom could even formulate an answer, a very quiet, steady voice came from right behind them. "I saw absolutely everything." It was Nurse Elena Park. She was still dressed in her blue hospital scrubs. Her dark hair hastily tied back in a loose, messy bun. She tightly clutched a plastic medical clipboard to her chest, exactly like a protective shield. "I was standing right at the reception desk when I suddenly heard loud shouting," Elena stated clearly. "I looked up just as Mrs. Hale began to fall backwards. There was undeniable physical contact. Victoria Hale's foot aggressively hit her ankle on purpose." Officer Ramirez nodded very slowly, writing it down. "Thank you so much, ma'am. We will absolutely need your formal written statement, as well as a complete Copy of the hospital's security camera footage. Elena hesitated for a second, looking nervous. The security footage is heavily stored on a closed, internal hospital system, but I can immediately request the security department to legally preserve it before it is overwritten. Tom's angry eyes softened slightly with profound gratitude. Please do it right now, miss, before anyone powerful tries to magically make it disappear. Elena nodded firmly, hurrying off quickly toward the administrative staff wing. Mere moments later, Brandon Hale suddenly appeared in the hallway, looking incredibly sharp and put together even in the midst of a massive crisis. His expensive, tailored suit was perfectly untouched, his handsome expression completely cold and unreadable. He carried his gold Montblanc pen casually in one hand, aggressively signing a legal document as he spoke urgently into his iPhone. Yes, Victoria. Listen to me. Do not talk to anyone until my corporate lawyer physically arrives there. I will personally handle this. When he finally looked up from the screen, the two police officers were already standing there, facing him squarely. Mr. Hale, Ramirez said evenly, his tone completely professional. We will need to take your formal statement regarding an alleged physical assault involving your pregnant wife. Brandon exhaled incredibly slowly, pretending to exude total calm. Alleged. Officer, my highly emotional wife simply had an unfortunate moment of clumsiness. She tripped on the tile. That is absolutely all that happened here. Tom's furious voice boomed loudly down the quiet hall. You arrogant bastard. You call that a trip? You weren't even in the damn building. Sir. Please, Ramirez intervened quickly, holding up a hand to stop the fight. Let's all just stay calm here. He turned his attention back to Brandon. We will still absolutely need to view the CCTV security footage, and we will need to formally interview your sister and Miss Reed tonight. Brandon's dark eyes flickered with deep annoyance. That absolutely won't be necessary, officer. My family will gladly handle this unfortunate misunderstanding entirely privately. Ramirez's facial expression instantly hardened into stone. It officially became a public police matter the exact moment 911 was called. Sir. The heavy tension in the hallway was entirely suffocating. The quiet, rhythmic hum of the various hospital machines mixed uneasily with the scratching sound of police pens rapidly writing over carbon copy forms. Officer Daniels quickly snapped a digital photo of Lily's medical chart to include in the official report. Inside the private room, Lily sat propped up uncomfortably against several pillows, looking incredibly pale but emotionally steady. Her hand rested fiercely and protectively over her round belly. She looked up anxiously when Tom finally entered the room again. Are they gone yet? She asked. Not yet, Tom said softly, sitting back down. They are actively taking formal statements from the staff. Dad, her voice suddenly broke with emotion. I am so incredibly scared of them. Tom gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her sweaty forehead. You absolutely don't have to be scared anymore. Lily, you're not alone in this fight. A soft knock on the door abruptly interrupted them. Elena stepped quickly inside, tightly clutching a printed legal form. Mr. Carter, Officer Ramirez. I successfully got it. The hospital's legal department has officially, legally preserved the entire video footage from Corridor C. They absolutely cannot erase it or tamper with it now. Ramirez's experienced eyes met Tom's. Good work, nurse. That specific video will tell us absolutely everything we need to know. Brandon abruptly appeared again in the open doorway, his handsome face incredibly tight with poorly concealed rage. You legally cannot take that hospital footage without a signed warrant from a judge. Ramirez smoothly slid a stamped legal document directly toward him. Already fully signed by a night court judge. Mr. Hade. For the very first time that night, Brandon's icy, arrogant composure completely cracked. You're making a massive, career-ending mistake, officer. No, Tom said, his voice incredibly low but deadly steady. The absolute only massive mistake made tonight was you arrogantly thinking your dirty money could permanently bury the truth. As the two police officers finally packed up their gear, the loud, mechanical hum of the small printer completely filled the tense silence. Ramirez decisively signed the very first official incident report with his pen, his handwriting incredibly deliberate and bold. Assault on a pregnant female. Primary suspects, Victoria Hale and Sloan Reed. Outside the hospital window, the freezing rain finally began to fall softly over the sleeping city of Manhattan. The bright, flashing lights from parked ambulances reflected violently red against the tall glass walls of Lenox Hill. A haunting, beautiful glow of absolute justice finally beginning to stir. Inside the quiet hospital room, Lily peacefully closed her eyes. For the very first time in agonizing months, she absolutely didn't feel weak or powerless. She whispered softly to her unborn child, "We are completely safe now, baby. They absolutely can't hurt us anymore." But out in the busy hallway, Brandon's cell phone buzzed aggressively again. It was an urgent, panicked message from Victoria. "We desperately need to make that security footage permanently disappear tonight." And that single, highly incriminating text message would eventually become the exact loose thread that completely unraveled absolutely everything they desperately tried to hide. High above the glittering Manhattan skyline, inside a massive, multi-million dollar luxury penthouse overlooking Park Avenue, Brandon Hale aggressively poured himself a heavy glass of expensive scotch. The massive, sprawling city below him glittered beautifully, exactly like a dark field of scattered diamonds, but his own reflection staring back in the glass window looked incredibly dark, heavy, and defeated. Behind him, Victoria Hale stood rigidly by the massive marble wet bar, pacing frantically back and forth in her expensive silk robe. The very air in the Lavish room reeked strongly of old money. Sheer panic. An absolute, toxic denial. We are in massive, terrible trouble. Brandon, she said sharply, her voice trembling. Do you have absolutely any idea what is currently trending on social media right now? Someone inside the hospital leaked the story that your heavily pregnant wife was violently kicked in a hallway. They're publicly calling me a sociopathic monster online. Brandon turned around slowly, his jaw tight with barely suppressed rage. And what exactly did you expect to happen? Victoria, you literally kicked a pregnant woman. You kicked my pregnant wife. Victoria's eyes flashed with fierce, unapologetic arrogance. I was aggressively defending this prestigious family's good name. She has been maliciously manipulating you from the very start. Brandon, pretending to be this fragile, innocent little victim just so you would heavily pity her. That absolutely isn't true love. Brandon, it is calculated, gold-digging strategy. He violently slammed his heavy crystal glass down onto the marble counter, nearly shattering it. Strategy? She almost lost our innocent baby tonight. Entirely because of your violent temper. The tense silence that immediately followed his outburst was incredibly thick and suffocating. From the corner velvet sofa, Sloane Reed slowly uncrossed her long legs. Her expensive Dior heels tapping softly against the glass coffee table. You both really need to just relax, she said incredibly coolly, entirely unbothered. The police currently have absolutely no hard proof of intent. They will eventually call it a clumsy accident, and your expensive corporate lawyers will easily clean up the mess for you, exactly like they always do. Victoria shot her a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. You absolutely shouldn't even be sitting here in my home. You are the exact reason this entire horrific mess happened in the first place. Sloane smirked condescendingly. Really? Because your notoriously violent temper and a hospital security camera seem to be the actual, real reasons we are in this mess. Victoria frantically grabbed her cell phone, aggressively scrolling through her messages. My lead attorney confidently says the video footage absolutely hasn't been released to the press yet. We can still easily pay someone to make it permanently disappear. Brandon shook his head slowly, walking dejectedly back toward the window. You really don't understand how this works. Victoria, that specific footage is currently sitting under secure police custody. Deliberately deleting it now would mean severe federal charges for obstruction of justice. Sloane leaned back deeply into the sofa cushions, her arrogant smile finally fading slightly. Then we had better actively pray to God it never mysteriously leaks to the press. A terrifying moment later, Brandon's cell phone buzzed loudly. It was an urgent news notification from Bloomberg Business. The bold headline completely froze the blood in his veins. Hale Industries' corporate empire under severe scrutiny after violent assault. Allegations against senior family members surface. His hand trembled violently as he read the article. It is already severely Affecting the family company, he said, his voice hollow. Major institutional. Investors are already frantically pulling out their money. Victoria aggressively snatched the phone right out of his hand. It is all just temporary media noise. I will immediately make a highly polished public statement. Something clean, professional, and completely sanitized. I will simply say I was graciously trying to help her stand up and she accidentally slipped on the tile. Don't do it, Brandon snapped viciously. Anything you publicly say right now could easily be used to completely destroy us in a courtroom. Victoria's facial expression hardened into pure, unbreakable stone. I personally built this massive corporate empire. Brandon, do you honestly think you can stop me from aggressively protecting it? Sloane laughed quietly, a mocking sound under her breath. Empire, please. Without your daddy's massive trust fund, you are literally nothing but a spoiled bully with a private elevator. Watch your damn mouth. Victoria hissed furiously, stepping aggressively closer to the younger woman. Oh, please don't worry about me, Sloane said smoothly, standing up tall, her eyes narrowing dangerously. I have infinitely more to lose here than you do. If I am forced to go down for this, so does your precious brother. And I absolutely have the saved text messages to legally prove it. Brandon turned around sharply in shock. What text messages? Sloane smiled incredibly sweetly at him. You really should check your own phone. Records. Sweetheart. She strutted confidently toward the penthouse door. Her sharp heels echoing loudly on the hardwood floor exactly like a ticking countdown clock. When the heavy door finally clicked shut behind her, Victoria muttered through gritted, angry teeth. You actually let your stupid mistress record your conversations. You absolute idiot. Brandon rubbed his aching temples in despair. I didn't know she was keeping them. She swore to me it was just private venting between us. Victoria angrily poured herself another massive glass of wine. Then we are absolutely all screwed. Just then, a loud notification pinged aggressively on the massive, wall-mounted MacBook Pro in the office. It was the family's highly secure shared cloud alert. A brand new official email had just arrived from NYPD Evidence Management. The ominous subject line read, Video footage legally preserved by emergency court order. Brandon's face went completely sickly pale. They have officially confirmed. They have the footage, he whispered in terror. Victoria's voice shook slightly. Who exactly requested it? He opened the digital message incredibly slowly. The legal sender. It is Attorney Maya Brooks. A very powerful lawyer I absolutely don't recognize. She is officially representing Lily, he said quietly. They're actively building a massive criminal case against us. Victoria's crystal wine glass slipped completely from her trembling hand, violently shattering into 100 pieces across the expensive marble floor. The sharp, breaking sound loudly echoed through the quiet penthouse exactly like a judge's guilty verdict. Brandon stared blankly out the massive window again. Manhattan's glittering. Lights flickered brightly far below them, looking exactly like dying embers of a fire. If that security footage goes public, it is completely over for us, he muttered in defeat. No, Victoria said coldly, her voice dropping to a whisper. It is absolutely not over until I explicitly say it is over. She turned aggressively toward her brother, her dark eyes burning brightly with absolute, terrifying defiance. You go and fix your broken wife, and I will fix the rest of this mess. And right there, in that massive room built of pristine glass and ugly lies, the mighty Hale Empire truly began to violently crack. Not from external forces on the outside, but rotting entirely from within. The sterile hospital room was incredibly quiet now, except for the faint, distant hum of the massive city continuing beyond the glass window. Manhattan glowed brightly exactly like a sleepless, giant heart pulsing steadily through the dark night. Lily lay in her bed, only half awake, peacefully listening to the incredibly steady, reassuring rhythm of her baby's tiny heartbeat monitoring on the screen. Beside her, every single rhythmic beat was undeniable proof that life, fragile, beautiful, and fierce, absolutely refused to just give up. Her father, Tom, sat quietly in a vinyl chair by the window, slowly sipping terrible, cold coffee from a flimsy paper cup. The deep, exhausted lines carved on his weathered face looked significantly sharper and harsher under the pale, unflattering hospital light. You really should have told me about this much earlier, Lily, he said quietly, breaking the silence. Lily turned her tired head toward him. Told you about what, Dad? That he was actively cheating on you. That his arrogant sister was maliciously treating you like garbage. You have been carrying this massive, toxic weight entirely alone for months. Lily swallowed hard, her dark eyes quickly glistening with unshed tears. I kept desperately hoping he would eventually change, Dad. Every single time he callously lied to me, he would immediately bring home expensive flowers. He would swear he was deeply sorry. I foolishly wanted to believe him. I naively thought true love was supposed to be about endless forgiveness. Tom sighed incredibly heavily. Forgiveness absolutely doesn't mean blindly letting someone repeatedly break you down. Sweetheart. The clock on the wall loudly ticked past midnight. Heavy rain tapped gently, rhythmically against the glass window, and the strong, clinical scent of antiseptic entirely filled the cold air. Lily felt her heavy heart physically ache, not just from the lingering pain in her bruised body, but from the flood of terrible memories. I vividly remember the very first time Victoria publicly insulted me, she said. Softly, her voice distant. We were at their massive family dinner in a penthouse on Fifth Avenue. She looked down at my simple shoes with such disgust and said, Cute. Where exactly do you shop? Target. Absolutely everyone in the room laughed at me. Even Brandon laughed. That is the exact moment I realized I truly didn't belong in their cruel world. Tom's tired eyes softened with immense love. You absolutely don't need their toxic world. Honey, you have got your own beautiful world. A soft, polite knock on the heavy door suddenly startled them both. A tall, handsome man dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit stepped quietly inside. He had a sharp, strong jawline, incredibly calm eyes, and a highly familiar face. It was Ethan Ward. Lily blinked rapidly, completely surprised by the late visit. He smiled, incredibly gently at her. Hey, Lily. I came as soon as I heard the news. Ethan was her highly respected boss. He was the brilliant CEO of the Ward Foundation, a massive, well-funded charity entirely dedicated to helping displaced families. He was widely known in New York high society for his quiet, understated power and his completely spotless, clean reputation. He was a rare man whose firm handshake actually meant something real. Tom stood up immediately, looking highly cautious. You're the big boss guy from her office, right? Yes, sir, Ethan said politely, carefully setting his leather briefcase down on the small table. But I am absolutely not here tonight as your daughter's boss. I am here purely as a friend, and as someone who intimately knows exactly how completely ruthless the Hale family can be. Lily frowned deeply in confusion. You actually know them? Ethan nodded slowly, his expression darkening slightly. My charity foundation once foolishly partnered with Hale Industries on a project. Let's just say I learned incredibly quickly that they absolutely do not play fair with anyone. If you're actually going to bravely fight them in court, you will desperately need help. Real, powerful help. Tom crossed his muscular arms over his chest. What exact kind of help are we talking about here? Ethan clicked open his leather briefcase and pulled out a thick legal folder. I immediately called a highly specialized lawyer tonight. Her name is Maya Brooks. She is incredibly smart, terrifyingly tough, and most importantly, she is absolutely not afraid of arrogant billionaires. She will gladly meet with you, both first thing tomorrow morning. Lily stared blankly at the thick folder, looking highly unsure. Ethan, I absolutely don't have the kind of money needed to pay for top-tier lawyers. Ethan smiled a very slight, reassuring smile. You absolutely don't need money. She personally owes me a massive favor from years ago. Besides, exposing the absolute truth is priceless to her. Tom nodded highly approvingly, sizing the younger man up. I really like this guy. Lily bit her lower lip nervously. Brandon will aggressively try to bury absolutely everything. He has massive political connections. And so do I, Ethan interrupted incredibly gently but firmly. Let me personally handle the public noise and the media. You just focus entirely on resting and getting better. He reached carefully into his suit pocket and placed a sleek black iPad directly on the hospital bedside table. This device has a highly secure Encrypted line directly to Maya. She has already successfully filed a legal preservation request for the hospital's CCTV footage. It absolutely cannot be legally deleted by anyone now. Lily's eyes widened in sheer shock. Already? Ethan's deep voice softened considerably. You are absolutely not fighting alone anymore, Lily. Not in this war. Outside the window, the freezing rain fell significantly harder, violently, washing the sleeping city in long streaks of silver street light. Tom exhaled a massive, shuddering breath for the very first time in agonizing hours. The heavy, suffocating weight in the hospital room slowly began to shift, paralyzing. Fear finally turning into something else entirely. Hope. Lily brushed a stray tear away from her cheek and whispered softly, "Thank you, Ethan. Truly." He gave her a small, respectful nod and looked thoughtfully out toward the window, where the bright, expensive lights of Park Avenue shimmered beautifully in the rain's reflection. "Get some much-needed rest tonight," he said firmly. "Because tomorrow morning, we officially start fighting back." And as the loud thunder rolled ominously across the Manhattan skyline, Lily profoundly realized that the violent storm outside absolutely wasn't her enemy anymore. It was her very first warning shot. The arrogant empire that had so callously hurt her was just about to spectacularly fall. The very next morning, the heavy rain had finally stopped, leaving the busy streets of Manhattan incredibly slick and beautifully glistening under the pale, cold winter sun. Outside Lenox Hill Hospital, yellow cabs honked loudly and thick white steam rose steadily from the subway grates. Normal life effortlessly moved on for everyone else, even when yours completely stood still. Inside the quiet room, Lily Carter sat up slowly in her hospital bed, her gentle hand resting protectively on her belly, happily feeling the soft, reassuring flutter of her baby's movement. Her exhausted father slept heavily in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside her, completely unwilling to leave her side. For a single second, a soft, polite knock came at the heavy door. A stunning woman dressed in a sharp, dark gray designer suit entered the room. She was incredibly confident, but possessed very kind, intelligent eyes. She carried a slim leather briefcase and projected a quiet, undeniable authority that instantly filled the small space. "Mrs. Carter?" she asked, her voice incredibly calm but firm. "I am Maya Brooks. Ethan Ward sent me to see you." Lily nodded gratefully, feeling physically weak but emotionally composed. "Please, just call me Lily." Maya smiled very gently and pulled a chair incredibly close to the side of the bed. "Then please, call me Maya. How are you feeling this morning?" "Incredibly tired," Lily admitted honestly. "I'm very scared, but I'm completely determined." "That is an absolutely excellent start," Maya said approvingly, opening her briefcase and smoothly sliding out a neat, organized stack of legal documents. "Let's talk frankly about exactly what we are dealing with here. I have already thoroughly reviewed the initial police report. The security footage from the hospital hallway is officially, legally preserved under a direct court request. Absolutely no one can delete that file without committing a serious federal felony. Tom stirred awake at the sound of her voice, aggressively rubbing his tired eyes. Good. Because I absolutely don't trust those rich people as far as I can throw them. Maya nodded in complete agreement. You are absolutely right not to trust them. Victoria Hale's highly expensive legal team already desperately tried to reach out to the hospital's administration late last night, falsely claiming the violent incident was merely a simple family misunderstanding. Luckily for us, the legal preservation order went through exactly an hour earlier. Lily's eyes widened in terror. So they were actually actively trying to cover up the crime. They absolutely always do, Maya said simply, without a hint of surprise. That is exactly how the ultra-rich protect themselves from consequences. But they made one massive, fatal mistake this time. This time, there were highly credible eyewitnesses, and we already possess Nurse Elena Park's sworn, written statement. That is our solid legal foundation. Lily looked down nervously at her hands. What exactly happens next? Maya? Maya leaned forward intensely, her tone instantly shifting from gentle comfort to razor-sharp, lethal precision. Now, we go aggressively on the offense. Step 1. We file for an immediate, permanent restraining order against Brandon, Victoria, and Sloan. Step 2. We push the DA for formal criminal charges for felony assault on a pregnant woman. And Step 3. We immediately open a massive civil lawsuit for severe emotional and physical damages. Tom raised a highly impressed eyebrow. You can really legally do all that too. Them? Maya smirked slightly, radiating absolute confidence. It is absolutely not my first billionaire takedown case. For a profound moment, stunned silence completely filled the small hospital room. The massive weight of her confident words slowly sank in. This was entirely real now. There was absolutely no going back to her old life. Lily hesitated, her fear surfacing. Won't Brandon fight this aggressively? He will absolutely try to completely destroy me. Maya nodded realistically. Of course he will try. That is exactly why we absolutely have to stay 3 strategic steps ahead of his team at all times. And luckily for us, your prenuptial agreement actually gives us massive legal leverage. My prenup? Lily blinked in pure, unadulterated surprise. Yes, Maya replied smoothly, expertly flipping through a thick legal document. The one you signed right before the wedding. There is a highly specific, airtight clause buried in there regarding proven infidelity and domestic misconduct. If legally proven, Brandon immediately forfeits his entire share of all marital assets, and he loses his future inheritance rights from the massive Hale family trust. Whoever carelessly drafted this contract clearly didn't think you would ever actually read it carefully, or ever dare to use it. Tom let out a low, Highly appreciative whistle. Well, isn't that just absolute poetic justice? Lily's eyes completely glistened with unshed tears. I honestly never even noticed that specific part of the contract. Maya smiled a very faint, satisfied smile. And that is exactly why you hired me. To read it. She closed the heavy folder with a very firm, decisive snap. Now, there is just one more very important thing. The media press is actively circling this salacious story like hungry sharks. Ethan is expertly handling all external communications. But if a desperate reporter ever approaches you directly, you must say absolutely nothing. Let the undeniable truth come out. Solely through the proper legal channels. Lily nodded slowly, understanding the gravity. Understood. Maya stood up gracefully, efficiently smoothing out her suit jacket. Just rest. And heal for today. Tomorrow morning, I will happily bring you the official court papers to sign. And Lily? Yes. Maya's sharp gaze softened into something incredibly maternal and empowering. You are absolutely not just a tragic victim in this story anymore. You are just about to become the legendary woman who publicly proved that absolutely no amount of dirty money can ever permanently bury the truth. As she confidently left the room, the bright morning sun slipped beautifully through the window blinds, casting warm stripes of golden light across Lily's bed. Tom reached out and squeezed his daughter's hand incredibly tight. You hear that, kiddo? You are absolutely going to win this war. Lily smiled a weak but genuine smile, whispering fiercely, for my baby's sake. I absolutely have to. And somewhere far across the sprawling city, sitting in a massive, glass, corporate tower on Park Avenue, Brandon Hale's cell phone buzzed loudly with a terrifying new news headline. One specific, feared name glowing brightly in bold text. Fierce attorney Maya Brooks officially takes on the Hale family dynasty. Exactly 2 days later, the massive chaos began incredibly quietly. It didn't start with shouting lawyers or loud courtroom battles, but with vicious, rapid whispers and explosive internet headlines. Manhattan woke up to shocking news. Flashes aggressively plastered on every single digital screen across Park Avenue. Pregnant wife of billionaire business heir brutally assaulted in Lenox Hill Hospital. Family vigorously denies allegations. The prestigious Hale family name, which was once entirely untouchable and revered, was suddenly, violently under intense public fire. Inside his sleek, modern office at the Ward Foundation, Ethan Ward sat calmly, staring at his massive MacBook Pro, rapidly scrolling through the endless social media feeds. Lily's tragic story was spreading incredibly fast, infinitely faster than any highly paid corporate PR press team could ever hope to control or suppress. But that was exactly the strategic point. This absolutely wasn't about seeking cheap publicity. It was entirely about exposing the absolute truth. He casually picked up his cell phone and confidently called Maya. The massive storm is officially here, he said simply. Maya's voice came through the speaker incredibly crisp and unbothered. Good. Let's just make absolutely sure it doesn't drown her in the process. At the exact same time, sitting safely in her quiet hospital bed, Lily nervously watched the chaotic news broadcasts with a complex mixture of lingering fear and profound disbelief. Her face thankfully wasn't shown on screen, only blurred. Generic images of the hospital exterior, accompanied by a damning, direct quote from the official police report. Eyewitness officially confirms deliberate, violent physical contact. She turned her head slowly to look at her father, who was calmly sipping his hot morning coffee right beside the sunny window. They are really, truly talking about me out there, she whispered in awe. Tom nodded slowly, a proud smile on his face. You are absolutely not invisible to the world anymore, kiddo. Just then, her cell phone buzzed loudly on the tray. It was a message from an entirely unknown number. A highly threatening text appeared. You need to stop this madness right now before it's entirely too late for you. There was absolutely no name attached, but she absolutely didn't need one to identify the sender. She intimately knew that arrogant, condescending tone. Victoria. Her stomach instantly tightened with anxiety. She quickly showed the terrifying message to Maya the exact second she arrived later that afternoon. Maya read the text, frowning deeply in disgust. This is a classic, pathetic intimidation tactic used by desperate people. I will immediately add it to our growing evidence file. Every single threatening message officially counts as criminal harassment now that the temporary restraining order is pending with the judge. Lily looked highly uneasy, wringing her hands. But they will just aggressively deny they ever sent it. Of course they will try to deny it, Maya said simply, completely unfazed. But cheap verbal denials absolutely cannot stop hard digital evidence. Meanwhile, sitting comfortably in a busy downtown coffee shop, Ethan secretly met with an investigative journalist from the highly respected New York Ledger. He had known her professionally for years. She was a brilliant, relentless woman who had successfully exposed more than one massive, corrupt corporate scandal. Completely off the official record, Ethan said carefully, leaning across the small table. I can absolutely confirm to you that the hospital security footage is 100% real, and it is currently heavily protected under an emergency court order. I legally cannot share the actual file with you, but I can confidently tell you that the victim is currently under excellent medical care and is cooperating fully with the NYPD. The eager journalist leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. And what about the alleged attackers? Let's just happily say their highly paid defense lawyers are very, very busy today, Ethan replied smoothly, taking a calm, satisfied sip of his hot espresso. By noon that day, Twitter was an absolute raging inferno. Viral hashtags like Justice for Lily and Protect the Unborn were aggressively trending worldwide. Massive public sympathy shifted instantly and sharply entirely in Lily's favor. For the very first time in its long history, The untouchable Hale families. Massive corporate empire felt genuinely, physically vulnerable. Not just from the volatile stock market, but from the immense, undeniable fury of the people. At the luxurious Hale Industries corporate headquarters, Victoria Valiente, threw her expensive cell phone completely across her massive glass desk, shattering the screen. "They are intentionally turning me into a public villain," she shouted, hysterically at the walls. "We absolutely have to issue a formal press statement. Right now." Brandon looked completely, utterly exhausted. He had massive, dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. "Absolutely no public statement. Victoria. It will only violently feed the media frenzy. Just let me go down there and talk to Lily. Privately. She will eventually listen to me." Sloane, lazily lounging in an expensive leather chair with a highly smug grin, scoffed loudly. "Do you actually, honestly think she will listen to a single word you say after exactly what we all did to her? Wake up from your delusion. Brandon. She is real, powerful lawyers protecting her now. Because of you." Victoria stopped viciously, pointing a shaking finger at the younger woman. Sloane simply shrugged nonchalantly. "Because of you, sweetheart," she shot back, venomously. Their bitter, screaming fight was abruptly interrupted by Brandon's phone, vibrating violently on the desk again. He looked down and saw a terrifying new breaking headline. Anonymous corporate insider leaks. Hale family desperately tried to illegally delete hospital security footage. All the remaining color completely drained from his face, turning him ghostly, pale. "Who the hell leaked that to the press?" Victoria's voice violently trembled with pure panic. "They are actively playing a massive game of chess, Brandon, and we are just the pathetic pawns." Back at the peaceful hospital, Ethan arrived looking cheerful, just as Maya was wrapping up her daily legal visit. He proudly brought a beautiful, small gift bag, an incredibly soft, expensive lavender baby blanket from Tiffany's, meticulously embroidered with tiny, elegant initials, LC. Lily smiled incredibly weakly, tears springing to her eyes. "You really didn't have to do this, Ethan." "I genuinely wanted to," Ethan said incredibly softly, his eyes warm. "I wanted to give you something beautiful to constantly remind you exactly what we are fiercely fighting for." She gently traced the embroidered initials with her trembling fingers, hot tears welling up rapidly. "Absolutely everything in my life just feels like an endless war right now." "It absolutely is a war," he said firmly. "But not every single war is violently fought with guns. Some are beautifully fought with absolute truth and immense patience." That quiet night, Lily simply couldn't fall asleep. The bright, colorful city lights spilled beautifully through the hospital blinds, painting warm gold lines across the sterile floor. She stared lovingly at the soft Tiffany blanket resting on her bed and whispered fiercely to her unborn child, "We are absolutely going to win this massive war for you." Across the sprawling city, trapped in a massive, cold penthouse filled entirely with dead silence and shattered glass. Victoria Hale frantically scrolled through the endless viral posts, her breathing incredibly shallow and uneven. She had spent her entire life meticulously building her existence on absolute control, endless money, unchecked power, and a flawless public reputation. But absolutely none of it could stop the massive, destructive avalanche that was rapidly coming for her next. Because once the entire world finally starts watching, even the most mighty and arrogant simply cannot hide their dirty sins forever. The massive, opulent crystal chandeliers of the iconic Plaza Hotel sparkled brilliantly, exactly like captured stars, their warm, golden light falling beautifully over a massive room completely full of Manhattan's wealthiest elite. Expensive crystal champagne glasses chimed cheerfully. Talented string musicians played softly in the corner, and lively conversations buzzed enthusiastically about stock portfolios, elite charity galas, and the latest high society gossip. It was absolutely supposed to be a highly calm, sophisticated evening, a massive, expensive business dinner specifically designed to quickly repair the heavily damaged Hale family's public reputation. But hiding just beneath the highly polished marble floors and the overwhelming scent of expensive designer perfume, the unspoken tension in the room was sharp, enough to literally cut glass. Brandon Hale nervously adjusted his diamond cufflinks, aggressively forcing a fake plastic smile onto his face as he desperately greeted wary investors and hesitant old friends. "It is so good to see you tonight, Roger." Yes, it was all just a massive, unfortunate misunderstanding. The greedy media absolutely always exaggerates everything for clicks, he lied smoothly, aggressively, shaking hands while cold sweat visibly glistened on the back of his neck. Sitting tensely across the large dining table, Victoria Hale was an absolute raging storm, poorly hiding behind a brittle, fake smile. Her massive, multi-million-dollar diamond necklace shimmered blindingly under the chandelier light, but her dark eyes were completely dead and cold. She leaned aggressively toward her sweating brother and hissed in a whisper, "Keep smiling, Brandon. If these ruthless people see even an ounce of fear in you, they will immediately smell blood in the water." Brandon violently clenched his jaw, barely keeping his temper in check. "The absolute only thing they will smell tonight is a massive public scandal if you don't stop talking to me." Sloane Reed arrived to the dinner fashionably, arrogantly late, dressed highly, inappropriately in a daring, backless silver designer gown. Aggressive paparazzi photographers waiting outside on the street had already happily caught her walking proudly in, absolutely ensuring her scandalous picture would be plastered on every single gossip site by early morning. "So incredibly sorry I'm late," she purred loudly, smoothly sliding into her empty leather seat. The downtown traffic was absolute murder tonight. Victoria glared at her with pure, unadulterated loathing. "You absolutely shouldn't even be sitting here in public with us." "Oh, just relax, Victoria," Sloane said dismissively, confidently pouring herself a massive glass of vintage champagne. The more we act completely normal and unbothered, the vastly faster this stupid little scandal dies down. But exactly as she arrogantly raised her crystal glass to her lips, a very tall, imposing man dressed in a sharp black suit confidently entered the massive ballroom. His sharp eyes meticulously scanned the wealthy crowd until they landed directly on Victoria. He walked purposefully, straight toward their private table. The man smoothly handed Victoria a thick, heavily sealed legal envelope. "Miss Hale, you have officially been served," he said quietly, but loud enough for the table to hear. Every single head sitting at the table turned rapidly in shock. The thick envelope was highly visibly marked with the official seal of the New York Supreme Court. The entire bustling room seemed to completely freeze in time. Brandon's handsome face instantly went ghostly pale. "What the hell is this?" "Now." Victoria violently ripped the envelope open with violently trembling fingers. Her terrified eyes darted frantically across the complex legal papers. Then, she aggressively slammed the thick folder shut on the table. "It is an emergency restraining order," she hissed venomously, her voice shaking. "Officially filed by Lily Carter." Sloane laughed nervously, a highly inappropriate, bubbling sound. "You have got to be absolutely kidding me." Victoria snapped at her viciously. "She is actively playing incredibly dirty." Brandon exhaled a very sharp, terrified breath. "Not dirty, Victoria. She is playing incredibly smart." Meanwhile, sitting completely unnoticed in a dark, quiet corner booth across the massive room, Maya Brooks and Ethan Ward watched the entire chaotic scene unfold with immense satisfaction. Ethan's expensive, tailored suit blended in perfectly with the wealthy crowd. He looked exactly like just another bored investor. But his dark gaze was incredibly sharp and highly focused. Maya leaned in and whispered softly, "Legal delivery officially confirmed. The security cameras from the plaza are actively backing the entire interaction up." Ethan nodded approvingly, taking a sip of his drink. "Good. Highly public. And entirely legal. All in one brilliant move. That exact embarrassing scene will hit every single major financial headline by early morning." At the main dining table, Victoria's barely contained anger finally boiled over into a public rage. She stood up abruptly from her chair, the heavy wood scraping loudly and aggressively across the polished marble floor, drawing even more attention. "I am absolutely not taking this public humiliation anymore," she growled loudly, her voice shaking violently with pure fury. "My elite legal team will absolutely crush her in court." Brandon frantically grabbed her arm, trying to force her to sit down. "Sit the hell down, Vic. You are actively making it so much worse for us." "I am aggressively trying to save us," she snapped back loudly, slapping his hand away. "Do you honestly think I will let that pathetic little nobody completely destroy our pristine family name?" Absolutely all eyes in the massive ballroom turned directly toward their table. The entire room, which was once filled with highly polite, hushed conversation, now loudly hummed with fierce, whispered, toxic judgment. Sloane simply sipped her expensive champagne incredibly slowly, a highly smug, entertained smirk on her face. Huge congratulations, Victoria. You have officially just made tonight's breaking headlines all by yourself. Across the crowded ballroom, Maya quietly reached into her purse and handed Ethan a small, encrypted USB drive. This is the full, unedited digital copy of the Plaza's live security feed. It is undeniable evidence of her extreme public aggression, just in case we need it. Ethan slipped the small drive securely into his jacket pocket, a dark smile playing on his lips. Let her loudly dig her own massive grave tonight. Back at the chaotic table, Victoria finally sat down heavily, her entire body visibly trembling with rage and humiliation. They absolutely won't ever win. This, she whispered desperately to her brother. We have endless money, elite, lawyers, and massive power. Brandon looked at his sister, his dark eyes completely hollow and dead. Absolutely none of that helps us when the undeniable truth is fully caught on video. As the decadent dessert course finally arrived, beautiful, untouched creme brulee, glowing softly under the romantic candlelight, the loud buzz of polite conversation returned to the room. But now, absolutely everyone in attendance was loudly, eagerly whispering about them, about the spectacular fall of the mighty Hales. Outside on the street, the night air was incredibly cold, crisp, and sharp. Maya and Ethan exited the hotel discreetly through a hidden side entrance, expertly avoiding the massive throng of shouting reporters clustered aggressively at the front doors. Maya exhaled deeply, finally allowing herself a victorious smile. One highly public scene. That is absolutely all it takes to instantly turn public sympathy into massive public outrage. Ethan looked thoughtfully up at the glowing, iconic sign of the Plaza Hotel, a massive, historic symbol of immense wealth and unchecked arrogance. They desperately wanted to play this dirty game in public, he said quietly, zipping his coat. Now the entire public gets to happily sit back and watch them fall. Back inside the lavish ballroom, Victoria's pale hand trembled violently as she desperately poured herself yet another massive glass of champagne. Her own distorted reflection in the expensive crystal looked incredibly powerful, but undeniably, terrifyingly fragile. For the very first time in her privileged, sheltered life, she truly felt something she absolutely hadn't felt in many, many years. Sheer, unadulterated fear. Because she finally realized that the thin legal envelope delivered at the Plaza wasn't just harmless paper. It was the very first, massive, devastating crack in the perfect mirror that had always successfully hidden her dark sins from the world. The imposing marble halls of the New York County Courthouse felt infinitely colder and vastly more sterile than the freezing December wind blowing outside. Dozens of aggressive reporters tightly lined the massive stone steps. There, bright cameras flashing violently as Maya Brooks expertly guided Lily carefully past them, maintaining a highly protective, firm hand on her shaking shoulder. Lily wore a very simple, elegant navy blue dress, her large baby bump highly visible beneath her soft, warm winter coat. She looked physically fragile, but her dark eyes clearly told an entirely different, powerful story. They were incredibly steady, fiercely unblinking, and totally fearless. Ethan Ward confidently followed right behind her, walking closely with Tom Carter. Both imposing men remained entirely silent, serving as highly protective, physical shields against the shouting crowd. "Just keep your head held incredibly high," Tom whispered encouragingly into his daughter's ear. "They absolutely cannot break you if you refuse to let them see your fear." Inside the massive building, the busy courtroom loudly buzzed with a quiet, highly organized chaos. Expensive lawyers frantically shuffled thick stacks of papers. Eager journalists furiously whispered updates into their cell phones. And the Hale family's elite, high-priced legal defense team, 5 ruthless attorneys impeccably dressed in custom-tailored suits, completely filled the large defense table. Brandon sat squarely at the center of the table, his posture incredibly tense and rigid, his dark eyes cast downward in shame. Right beside him, Victoria whispered frantically and aggressively to her exhausted lead attorney, Sloan. Reed sat quietly behind them, her massive designer sunglasses completely hiding her puffy, red eyes. When Lily finally entered the room, the entire space went completely, terrifyingly still. The presiding judge, a highly sharp, no-nonsense woman in her late 50s named Judge Ramirez, looked critically over the massive legal file on her bench. Case number 4278. Carter versus Hale. Formal petition for a permanent restraining order and severe criminal assault charges, the judge announced loudly. "Are absolutely all parties present in the courtroom?" "Yes, Your Honor," Maya replied instantly, her strong voice incredibly calm and highly commanding. The opposing lead defense lawyer, a very tall, arrogant man named Daniel Price, stood up smoothly. "Your Honor, my clients, Miss Victoria Hale and Miss Sloan Reed, staunchly maintain that this entire incident was simply an unfortunate clumsy accident." Emotions were admittedly running high that evening, but there was absolutely no malicious intent to cause physical harm to the plaintiff. Maya rose gracefully from her chair. "Intent or not, Your Honor, the strict letter of the law absolutely does not ever excuse horrific physical violence against a heavily pregnant woman." She placed a thick legal folder onto the judge's desk, sliding verified copies toward the defense. "Here is Nurse Elena Park's sworn, notarized eyewitness statement, the official NYPD police report, and the certified hospital medical records directly confirming severe internal bruising entirely consistent with a violent kick. Victoria's jaw clenched so hard a muscle twitched in her cheek. Brandon leaned forward anxiously, whispering something frantic to his lead attorney. Judge Ramirez carefully adjusted her reading glasses, scanning the documents. Do we have actual, verified video evidence of the event? Maya nodded confidently. Yes, Your Honor. We have highly secured, unedited footage from the Lenox Hill Hospital hallway. It is clearly timestamped at 8:42 p.m. and was legally preserved under a direct emergency court order. Loud, shocked gasps instantly rippled through the packed courtroom. Even Brandon's highly paid attorney seemed completely caught off guard by the revelation. Victoria whispered incredibly harshly to her brother. You swore to me that the footage was permanently gone. Brandon's face went completely, sickly pale. I explicitly told you it was heavily locked down by the police. That is quite enough, the judge interrupted sharply, banging her gavel once. Please play the video footage for the court. A large digital projector immediately flickered brightly to life. On the massive screen at the front of the room, the silent, high-definition black and white video clearly showed the empty hospital hallway. Lily stood innocently near the door, protectively holding her stomach. Then, Victoria and Sloane aggressively entered the frame. Their specific words were obviously unreadable without audio, but their highly aggressive, threatening physical gestures were completely unmistakable. The violent shove, the clumsy stumble, the sharp, deliberate kick, and finally, Lily's agonizing fall to the hard floor. Even entirely without sound, the sheer, malicious violence of the unprovoked act spoke infinitely louder than any words possibly could. Furious murmurs instantly filled the crowded room. Victoria's smug lawyer completely froze in shock. Brandon looked exactly like he desperately wanted to disappear through the floorboards. The judge exhaled incredibly slowly, her fierce eyes fixed entirely on Victoria. In disgust, Miss Hale, would you care to attempt to explain this footage to the court? Victoria swallowed incredibly hard, her usually confident voice trembling violently. She just clumsily tripped on the tile. I was honestly just trying to help her stand up. The judge's tone turned instantly, terrifyingly icy. By violently kicking her while she was falling. Mocking laughter rippled quietly from the audience gallery before the armed bailiff barked loudly, "Order in the court." Maya absolutely didn't gloat at the victory. She didn't need to. She simply stood and said, "Your Honor, the video footage is entirely self-explanatory. We formally ask for the immediate granting of a full, permanent restraining order and formal permission to aggressively pursue felony criminal assault charges." The judge nodded decisively. "Your request is fully granted. Effective immediately. Miss Hale and Miss Reed are strictly, legally prohibited from ever contacting or approaching Mrs. Carter in any capacity whatsoever. If they do, They will be instantly jailed. She turned her fierce glare directly to Brandon. Mr. Hale, you are officially listed as a key witness and a potential criminal accomplice in this matter. I highly suggest you cooperate fully with the ongoing police investigation. Brandon looked exactly like a completely broken man violently caught between two vastly different worlds, toxic family loyalty and crushing personal guilt, tearing him completely apart from the inside. As the judge's heavy gavel struck the wood, eager reporters immediately bolted frantically for the double doors, absolutely ready to send shocking breaking headlines flying across the globe. Outside the building, the incredibly cold, crisp winter air hit Lily's flushed face exactly like a refreshing baptism. Hundreds of bright cameras flashed blindingly. Dozens of loud questions flew at her from the press. But for the very first time in her life, she absolutely didn't try to hide her face. She faced them bravely head-on, standing incredibly tall right beside Maya and Ethan. Mrs. Carter, a loud reporter called out over the din. Exactly how do you feel right now after finally seeing the horrific video played in court? Lily paused thoughtfully, her calm voice carrying steadily over the noise. I feel completely validated knowing that the absolute truth will always matter. Infinitely more than vast amounts of money. Tom smiled incredibly proudly beside her, beaming at his strong daughter. Ethan glanced warmly at her, deeply admiring the immense, quiet courage hiding right behind that calm, measured tone. Directly across the busy street, hiding safely behind the darkly tinted window of a running Mercedes S-Class, Victoria Hale watched the entire triumphant scene unfold. Her pale, manicured hands shook violently around a crystal champagne flute she hadn't even taken a sip from. She had spent her entire, privileged life firmly believing she was entirely untouchable by consequences. But that massive, arrogant illusion had just completely, spectacularly shattered into pieces under the harsh, unforgiving courtroom lights. And as the devastating headlines rapidly hit every single screen in New York City, one absolute, undeniable truth spread infinitely faster than her dirty money could ever contain. Even the most incredibly powerful people in the world can bleed when the sharp truth finally cuts them deep enough. The sprawling, luxurious Hale penthouse situated high on Park Avenue had absolutely never felt so incredibly quiet and dead. Normally, its massive walls loudly buzzed with the constant hum of dedicated staff, the soft, elegant thrum of live classical music, and the faint, sweet aroma of imported orchids. Tonight, however, it was completely, terrifyingly still, exactly like the agonizing, silent calm right before a massive bomb explodes. Brandon Hale sat alone at the incredibly long, polished marble dining table. His untouched, expensive steak rapidly cooling on his designer plate. He tiredly loosened his silk tie and stared blankly at the horrifying headlines glowing brightly from his iPhone screen. Powerful Hale family officially faces severe criminal charges. Heiress Victoria Hale under intense public fire after shocking courtroom footage released. Another notification abruptly flashed across his screen. Hale Industries stock plummets a devastating 12% overnight in wake of scandal. He violently shut off the phone screen, aggressively rubbing his aching temples. In despair, "We are completely losing absolutely everything," he muttered, brokenly to the empty room. From across the massive room, Victoria stood rigidly by the floor-to-ceiling window, a heavy glass of red wine trembling visibly in her pale hand. "No," she said sharply, her voice dripping with denial. "We are absolutely not losing. We are simply going to reclaim control of the narrative." Brandon laughed loudly, a deeply bitter, humorless sound. "Control? You literally just got legally banned by a federal judge from ever contacting my wife. You are currently trending worldwide on Twitter as the kicking heiress. There is absolutely no control left for us to reclaim." Victoria turned around incredibly slowly, her face ghostly pale but completely furious. "Do you honestly think I am afraid of fickle public opinion? I have successfully, brilliantly rebuilt this family's public image from scratch. Before, I will easily do it again." Sloane Reed walked casually in from the outdoor balcony, her revealing silver dress now replaced with a highly casual, expensive designer sweatshirt. Even in her obvious discomfort, she looked undeniably stunning. But her usual, arrogant confidence had entirely cracked. "You absolutely cannot just magically fix this mess, Victoria," she said softly, pouring a drink. Everyone in the entire world saw the raw video. The damage is entirely done. Victoria glared at her with pure, unfiltered hatred. "You absolutely shouldn't even be talking to me right now. You are exactly as legally guilty in this as I am." Sloane folded her arms defensively across her chest. "At least I didn't actively commit a felony by trying to illegally delete police evidence. Do not even attempt to drag me down with you into prison." Brandon violently slammed his open hand hard onto the marble table. "That is enough. You are both acting exactly like spoiled children while our family company literally bleeds millions of dollars." Victoria's expression shifted into something incredibly ugly. "Then act exactly like a real man, Brandon. Step up to the plate and fix the problem." He stared at his sister in absolute, profound disbelief. "Fix what exactly?" "Victoria, my innocent wife almost lost our baby entirely because of your violent temper. You are the one who destroyed everything." For a long, agonizing moment, complete silence swallowed the massive room. Then, incredibly quietly, Victoria said, "She was absolutely never one of us." Brandon froze entirely. "You deliberately kicked her just because she wasn't born rich?" Victoria's voice wavered slightly with emotion, but absolutely didn't soften in the slightest. "You foolishly married a weak woman entirely beneath your prestigious family name. I explicitly warned you years ago that she would eventually ruin you." Sloane smirked faintly from the couch. "Well, That specific prophecy certainly came true today. Just not at all in the exact way you arrogant planned it. Victoria's eyes flashed with pure, unadulterated fury. Shut your damn mouth. Right now. Sloane tilted her head mockingly. Entirely unafraid. Or what exactly? You'll violently kick me, too. The immense tension in the room finally snapped completely, like shattered glass. Victoria violently threw her heavy crystal wine glass directly against the far wall. The dark red liquid splattered aggressively across an original, priceless painting worth vastly more than most average houses. Brandon pushed his heavy chair back from the table, looking utterly disgusted. You are completely insane. Victoria's voice finally cracked with panic. I am desperately trying to save this family. Brandon. I am trying to save absolutely everything our father worked so hard to build. Our father built this company entirely on integrity, he cut in viciously. Shouting now. And you completely burned it to the ground with your disgusting, unchecked arrogance. He forcefully grabbed his heavy jacket from the back of the chair, pocketed his Mercedes keys, and quickly started walking toward the front door. Where the hell are you going? Victoria shouted desperately after him. To finally face exactly what is left of my ruined life, he said incredibly, bitterly over his shoulder. Maybe to actually try and do something right for once in my miserable existence. Sloane frantically followed him out to the private elevator banks. Brandon. Please wait for me. He stopped walking but absolutely didn't turn around to look at her. Don't. Follow me. You have already done more than enough damage to last a lifetime. When the heavy brass elevator doors finally slid completely closed, Sloane stood there entirely alone in the hall, staring blankly at her own pathetic reflection. In the polished metal, her cell phone buzzed loudly in her pocket. It was a new text message from a completely blocked number. If you formally agree to testify for the prosecution, we will drastically reduce your prison sentence. Her throat tightened painfully. For the very first time in her selfish life, she profoundly realized that the absolute only person who could possibly save her from prison now was the exact same woman she had so maliciously helped to destroy. Inside the massive, ruined penthouse, Victoria stood entirely alone among the absolute mess. The shattered crystal glass on the floor, the spilled red wine, dripping down the expensive painting, the slowly fading, golden glow of the city. Skyline outside. She bent down slowly, picked up her discarded diamond Cartier bracelet from the floor, and stared blankly at it. Her own tragic reflection was heavily fractured and distorted in its shiny surface. Outside, the massive city of Manhattan glittered incredibly coldly, entirely indifferent to her spectacular public fall from grace. Meanwhile, sitting in a small, warm office located downtown, Maya sat comfortably at her desk with Ethan, meticulously reviewing their exact next legal steps. They will entirely break very soon, Maya said confidently, sipping her coffee. Immense pressure almost always makes arrogant, powerful people completely Implode. Ethan nodded in agreement, scrolling smoothly through files on his laptop. And when they finally do implode, Lily absolutely won't just win this case in court. She will completely win back her good name. At that exact same, quiet moment, lying safely in her warm hospital bed, Lily held her round baby bump tenderly, whispering softly to herself in the dark, "He is rapidly losing absolutely everything he cares about. But I am finally getting something incredibly precious back today. Complete, absolute peace." And while the massive, corrupt Hale empire rapidly began to entirely rot from the inside out, Lily Carter, the quiet, unassuming woman they had so cruelly tried to crush, was quietly, beautifully rebuilding her entire world. Brick by honest, unbreakable brick. Light, beautiful snow flurries danced happily through the freezing air as bright morning light spilled warmly across the massive courthouse steps. The highly anticipated second hearing of Carter v. Hale was officially scheduled for 9 o'clock a.m. sharp, and absolutely every single major news outlet in New York City had aggressively gathered to watch the spectacle unfold. Dozens of eager reporters, huddled tightly together in heavy winter coats, their microphones held perfectly ready. The once completely invincible, untouchable Hale family had officially become a massive, front-page tabloid scandal, and the entire world was absolutely hungry for more blood. Inside the massive building, the courtroom loudly buzzed with electric tension. Maya Brooks sat incredibly calmly beside Lily, efficiently flipping through a thick stack of legal files with absolute, practiced precision. "Just remember," she whispered encouragingly, leaning in close, "today absolutely isn't about petty revenge. It is entirely about exposing the absolute truth. Just stay completely composed, no matter what terrible lies they try to say." Lily nodded firmly, her hands clasped securely over her round belly. Her difficult pregnancy was now fully entering its 8th month, and although she looked physically delicate, there was a fierce, entirely new strength burning brightly in her dark eyes. Her father, Tom, sat protectively right behind her, proudly wearing his old, faded FDNY firefighter jacket. It was a beautiful, silent, physical reminder that true courage absolutely ran deep in their blood. The heavy courtroom doors swung dramatically open. Brandon Hale entered the room. First, he looked significantly thinner, vastly older, and his usual, arrogant confidence was entirely replaced by a look of quiet, desperate panic. Right behind him came Victoria, dressed